I wanted to call to order the Monday, August 12th, 2024 regular meeting of the Jersey Shore Area School District Board of School Directors. Mr. Enders, could you please give us a roll call?
Mr. Allen.
Present.
Mr. Bernard. Here. Calhoun.
Here.
Ms. Edwards. Here. Mr. McDonald.
Here.
Mrs. Peters.
Here.
Mr. Furman.
Here.
Ms. Thomas.
Here.
Mrs. Semler.
Here.
All 9 members present.
Thank you. We will now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to communications. Dr. Almer.
Nothing under communications this evening.
Under President's Report, we had an executive session prior to tonight's meeting discussing personnel. Board representative is,
There
Not-
will, oh, sorry.
No, you're
There
right
will
ahead.
be a capital campaign committee in September that I know that Mr. McDonald and Mrs. Calhoun have already been invited to as part of the committee.
okay, wonderful.
And I believe we do have, I did share with the board information that we received from the Realtor giving an estimated value of what the lots at Avis would be. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, it's just under the, I guess the estimated, well, certain lots that were sold around the area came in anywhere from, I'm gonna say 1 acre up to, I think maybe 7 acres they come in anywhere, they were sold for $65,000 to $80,000 or 60 to 85, somewhere in that range. Some of them had septic, most of them did not have a septic system or the borough city sewer system to hook into, nor did they have a well. So most of those owners would have to have gotten their own septic system and water system.
And we do not have an answer yet on whether or not septic is available for those lots.
You want me to add to that report, then? Let me, I thought this
Use your
time,
microphone.
pardon me?
Can you use your
I felt
No,
it
he has
was.
it on.
Is it on?
He's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think in the next agenda, we're gonna try and get something moving here on these lots. I was thinking maybe Monday we could have a meeting, the three of us, Building and Grounds Committee, so we decide whether we wanna go with 2 acres, 3 acres, 4 acres, or 7 acres. But here's how it's gonna pan out from my experience. if the people buying these lots can hook their laterals onto the borough sewer system, kind of going to be a no-brainer. They can go through the borough and get their permits, and the borough will go through the county and get their approved or disapproved or some subdivision plans. If they can hook onto the borough sewer, you're going to have to get an SEO in there. And again, I forgot to mention the cost there. The cost that Mr. Hollick gave us was like $8,500 in the Avis area to go through the permits and obtain the subdivision from the county. But if they cannot hook onto the sewer system, you're going to have an SEO come in, make arrangements with him, come in and dig a test hole. And from that test hole, that SEO is going to approve or disapprove septic system on that property. So that's going to be an additional cost. And I'm estimating it probably, if you have 4 lots, probably somewhere around $500 come in and dig a test hole. And then besides digging a test hole on that property.
For each lot, Harry?
Pardon me?
For each lot or just in general?
No, for the total of 4 or 5, from my experience of doing stuff like that. And nowadays they're making you dig, if they approve one spot for a septic system, you have to have another spot pre-approved. So if that first spot fails down the road, then you can go to a backup system or backup place to put together the other sand mound, whatever they approve it for. So, like I say, that's still going to cost you $8,700, $85, somewhere around that $100, but you're going to have that additional cost. And again, I'm estimating it from what I do work for and stuff, probably around $500 and things. You don't know what you're getting into when you take an excavator in there and dig through the trees or what the ground is like or anything like that. So, any questions on that? We can get something together on the next agenda. I mean, to move forward somehow.
My question is the board okay with moving forward with putting something on the agenda if there's a recommendation from the Buildings and Grounds Committee? I mean, I think the committee could come up with whatever the next step is, as long as I know the board's okay with me putting whatever they come up with on the next agenda. That sounds like a yes. Okay. Okay.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Brungard. Superintendent's report?
There are 4 policies on the agenda this evening. Policy 803, school calendar, just for your information. There are a lot of policies coming through because of school code changes. Anytime school code changes, PSBA has to go through the policies and determine what policies that code change impacts, and then send us suggested updates. So, for example, policy 803, school calendar. School code used to say we had to be in school 180 days. Now we have the choice of being in school 180 days or so many hours. We've made the decision, and you've approved a calendar that has 180 days. We've not changed what we're doing, but because school code allows one or the other, your new policy would reference that school code says one or the other, but that doesn't mean that's what we're doing, but that is our policy aligning to school code, if that makes sense.
And it would be identified when we vote on the calendar.
Correct. It would be identified annually when we vote on the calendar, but the policy aligns itself to school code. That's very similar to what's happening in 909, 904, and 216. Policy 216, there is a local edit to that in conversation with Lycoming County Children and Youth that deals with custody agreements. We have had significant issues with staff, teachers, principals dealing with custody agreements and fighting over who we get to release, who we can or cannot release kids to. And interestingly enough, the legal opinion and Children and Youth's opinion is that's not our job. So we're reflecting that in policy and saying that is not our, if you're arguing over custody, go to court and get custody figured out. Don't come to us and ask us to figure out who to release the child to. You let us know what the new court order says and we'll comply with it. So we're reflecting that in our policy under student records. And then I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Enders to give you the state budget update.
Good evening, Board. In front of you is a breakdown of the allocations for the district coming out of the state budget. I'm not going to go through here and read all these numbers all for you. I trust that you all are capable of doing that. Couple of big highlights here is the adequacy supplement and the tax equity supplement were the two new pots that were in the approved budget this year. When you see those and we start going through the 25-26 budget process, they are rolled up into the Ready to Learn block grant, which is right above that. So in total, you'll see about 700 and some thousand when we look at our budget. I broke it out for illustration purposes because I didn't want to show a huge increase in Ready to Learn block grant because we didn't get an increase in Ready to Learn block grant. It's just how the state allocated the funds. The adequacy supplement piece of it, there are strings attached to that. We just this evening got an email from PD at 5 o'clock telling us the, I don't know, laundry list of items we are allowed to spend this money on. PASBO had provided that list to us at the end of July. I've reviewed that with Dr. Ulmer, and we have confirmed we are utilizing that to pay for some of our kindergarten teachers. Is the allowable expense to provide a full day kindergarten, which we are providing full day kindergarten. So that's what we will be utilizing our adequacy supplement funds. Okay. Tax equity supplement, that was another line in there. We did not receive any of those fundings, so I'm not even going to bring it up. That also had a laundry list of stuff. And all total, we are seeing a net increase in our revenue of about $4,000 over what we budgeted. Okay? Next line down, this is where it gets complicated. Tuition rate reform was not passed in the state budget. If you remember, we had budgeted that way for an $8,000 cap on regular ed, cyber, charter schools. It was not passed. However, they did add a new line item into the state budget of is cyber charter transition revenue, which is a new revenue stream that we are receiving. It's $174,000. However, when you take into consideration what we will be paying now in tuition, it will increase our budget expenditures by $451,000. There's a catch here. There's language in the budget to change how special ed tuition rate is going to be calculated. Nobody knows what that is right now. That goes into effect, and this is what the little fine print at the bottom is. That new tuition rate for special ed does not go into effect until January 2025. I sat through the PASBO webinar. Dr. Ulmer sat through the PASA webinar. We did it separately. Both organizations had basically the same comments. No one really knows what's going on in Harrisburg. So the first wrinkle here with this in this year's budget is they implemented it mid-year, which they don't know how that's going to work because it starts in January. And now they're still trying to figure out how it's going to work. So basically they all said, just stay tuned. So I would say the 450 is probably worst case scenario. That's the high side of the increase in expense. I do anticipate that to be coming down. So I guess I passed the news on to you. Let's just stay tuned. So with that, when you consider the $4,000 increase in revenue, the about $276,000 increase, net increase in the charter school cost, we have a net increase to our budget deficit of about $273,000. I will tell you, when the governor, and as you know, if you remember correctly, we said we were budgeting at the governor's proposal. The governor's proposal had a net savings for us of about $450,000 with the charter school tuition reform that he was proposing. So the savings would have been about 450,000. We got about 175,000. That's the biggest net difference. Is there any questions? As I hear more regarding the special ed tuition, I will be sure to bring that to your attention. I'm anticipating it to be around October, probably prior to Thanksgiving in November, when we'll finally start to get the final idea. I'll be honest, the real interesting piece is how they're going to implement this mid-year. That's
So Ben, this net increase in charter school costs that you have here is the increase over what you have budgeted, not necessarily that the state made this increase.
that line is all expenditure side. That's not revenue side. So it's an increase in our cost, what we have budgeted.
Okay,
And obviously, as kids would go in and out of charter schools, our costs fluctuate. And we track those every month. I can. I don't know if anybody else can. The special ed, the special ed tuition rate for charter schools is changing. How the calculation of that tuition rate is changing. Well, that's not funding, that's all expense.
Okay, so that's all expense. Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
thank you.
That's my report. Oh, sorry, one more thing. At your seats, I almost forgot, is a manila folder with your name on it from the athletic department of Mr. Minster with your yearly athletic passes. That's what that is. That's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Almer. Next, we will have courtesy of the floor. Mr. Bob Pryor has signed up. You can go first. Okay, no problem. Okay. Next is Kristen Morse. Yep. I just realized what it is that you were looking at. Yep, no problem. Dr. Lilly. Let's see. So under old business, there isn't any action items, which is what you listed. So it would be the second courtesy of the floor, if that's what you would like to speak on. Yep, no problem. Okay, I think we're safe. Ray Beerley, I see what you listed down. Let's see.
That's on the agenda.
Yep. Okay, if you could please state your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes.
Ray Beerley, Pyatt Township. I have several questions about the policy, sex-based distinctions in athletics. I missed any discussion of this previously, so I'm kind of in the dark a little bit. Are you voting tonight on that? Is that what that is, a vote? I couldn't tell.
Yes, and it is a second read with, the board voted on it once
Okay.
already.
All right, so I've read similar versions of this policy online, but none of them attributed to PSBA. Was this policy recommended? I'm just going to read the questions because I know you don't answer them right away, but I'll ask them. Was this policy recommended for adoption by PSBA? If not, where did it originate? As I said, I was able to find other versions of this policy online. Ours is missing some of what appears to be rather important text found in the other policies. Of particular interest is Part E, reasonable accommodations. Will you be adding the additional text? I have a link that I can share with you if you need to see what that other document looks like. It's a 3-page document. Ours is only a 2-page document. And if you don't add the reasonable accommodations language, how will you handle female requests to participate in a sport labels boys, such as football, where there is no female equivalent? Also, young boys who have not gone through puberty, how will you address that? This is language that's included in the other policy, the more complete policy. And for example, because there is no girls' football, those policies allow for the girls to try out for a football. Our policy would not. I also have a concern about what impact this policy might have on the well-being of transgender students in our district and in our community. Do you have any thoughts on that? And then my final question is, does this policy violate Title IX or any other laws, legislation? And if so, the answer to that is yes. Does this put the district at any risk of lawsuits, which could be expensive, that might occur challenging this policy if it is in fact a violation of Title IX or some other legislation? So because of the seriousness of these questions, I respectfully request that you table this vote until those questions are answered and we're more comfortable, unless you're already comfortable taking that chance. Have a nice night till the next courtesy of the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. Beerley. Before I move on to personnel, I just wanted to recognize and congratulate Kim Myers on her retirement here in the district. Thank you for all your years of service. Okay. We are looking to approve items under personnel, A through O. May I have a motion, please?
Muted. Tim's good.
Are there any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say aye. Motion passes. There is nothing under curriculum and instruction. Nothing under buildings and grounds. Moving on to finance, items to approve, A and B. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or concerns?
On the breakfast and lunch prices, not necessarily the prices, but did I read it correctly? We're still being provided breakfast for all of our kids?
Breakfast is
But not,
free.
okay.
Breakfast is free for all, lunch is free for free and reduced.
There won't be a reduce, you're saying? Oh, okay, interesting. Well, there is, but it's still gonna, it's gonna cost the kids
Yeah,
enough.
they're still categorizing them, they're still keeping the categories there. The reduced reimbursement from the students is coming from the state, that's why they want
Okay.
categories. We'll be doing a strong push here at the start of the school year to get applications in, get applications done, for the very reason of benefit of the students and the families of the
Do they do those online now?
They can,
Makes
they
it-
can do paper, they can do them online, and then obviously we still address it.
Okay.
For the public, can you state prices that are for elementary, middle school, and high school lunch?
Sure. Paid lunch for secondary students is $2.40. Paid lunch for elementary students is $2.30. Not an increase for the 24-25 school year.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say aye. Motion passes. Moving on to miscellaneous. Items to approve, A through J, with D being a roll call. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor of A through C and then E through J, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we will have a roll call for item D. Mr. Enders, whenever you are ready, please.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
No.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Edwards,
No.
McDonald,
No.
Peters,
No.
Mr. Furman,
No.
Thomas,
Yes.
Demler,
No.
Mills.
Is it allowed to ask for feedback for why that failed? Like, was it price? Was it something that the board just wasn't interested in?
It's a good question.
I mean, is that allowed?
I'm fine. I don't have a problem with
If,
that.
if board members individually would like to share, those who had voted no, does anybody here on their no vote would like to explain why you voted no? You can answer now if you would like.
I don't mind. I just, combination of cost, and we're looking at budget and trying to save, but yet we keep wanting to spend. So I just thought we could maybe look at a more affordable option.
Anyone else?
Thank you both.
I would actually give you my reason for voting no is I would have liked to have at least seen the foundation maybe take this on for a year and trial it, make sure it's effective, it's what's going to work well before we start paying for it. In light of all things, I have to agree with Mr. McDonald on just trying to hold it back, hold it down a little bit in expenses. But I do actually believe that it is something that is extremely beneficial. And I think that it's something that is necessary in the future to have. For a lack of better wording in my mind, I think it's just maybe bad timing to have to pay for something. But if the foundation is able to pick that up, I am all for it. You're welcome. Okay. Moving on to old business. Like I had stated previously, this section will be for, of course, any kind of old business, but particularly a discussion from the hearing that we had for school closure last Monday night. So if there is anyone that would like to start, please feel free.
I have a couple things, but I'm not sure that it will lead to much discussion. But they are definitely things that I'd like to bring to Dr. Ulmer's attention and the rest of the board, if I may.
Absolutely.
In not this packet that we received 3 weeks ago, the board for this hearing that we just had, the binder before that,
Okay.
there was the list that you and Mr. Wall had put together for priorities. And it had listed on it admin, Avis, Sal, all of the buildings. It had all of the discipline on it, and I will pass this.
Broken down by HVAC and building envelope, right?
Yes, and it had prices and it had the year. You could pass this down to Dr. Ulmer. If you could update that, I find that list is the most beneficial when looking at anything that we have had. And I am not sure that the new board members have received that. Because it was not in the binder that we had just received.
So when you say update it, here's my concern. So these numbers are the 2020 numbers.
I'm not necessarily concerned with price,
Okay.
but with what has been done, what has been completed.
Okay. So you want update in terms of items being removed?
Yes. I guess my main question is because that had dates on it, we had some sort of where we were headed. Like there were dates attached to things, to projects that may have been completed and what years they may have been completed. Like I know Avis is now just finishing up. So if we could update that information.
Kayla, can I add to that? Rather than saying items removed, items completed, still leave them
Yes.
there so that
Yes.
we have a reference back to these. We already did these things. It's not like we just all of a sudden this is all we're doing.
Correct. Thank you, Mary, for that clarification.
Well, and I will also, so I have these, but the reason I didn't give them back out is my concern is the prices. So I'll take the costs off because those are not, I know those aren't valid. Those are 2020. These numbers are 2020 numbers. That was my fear of putting this in there, because if you try to add this up and then you try to go to the new report and add those same items up, you're gonna get a different number.
So my only concern with that is in the, no, I'm not gonna quote this, I'm not gonna refer to that, I have to refer back to my notes. Because there were other things that, I believe it was Site Logic, I don't wanna misspeak, so, I will move on.
But I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. So then the next thing I want to ask is in the slide presentation, there is the list of the facility needs, alarm, alert, caution. In the binder that we received, there were 3 different areas where that same table was presented and none of the numbers.
Different.
They were all
They gave that to us, and I think it's because they gave that to us multiple times, so.
So, I mean, looking at other numbers, it concerns me as to, like, what numbers are now, what numbers were then. Again, like I had asked before about things being dated, so that the confusion could be cut out. Because there are some that are very drastic. I know looking,
I will figure out which one is the most recent from Site Logic and give it back to you.
that's all I have, thank you.
Harry, you were dealing with the lots. Can you tell me how close those lots are to the actual building?
Well, that's what we have to decide, basically. If we take I guess where the development is on the opposite side of the woods up to the building, there's a big lawn between the building and the woods there. Take them up to there, I think we're gonna leave a little bit of woods left, so the school district could have a little room there, whatever, but like I say, if we go with 2, 3 acre, 4 acre lots, we're gonna have quite a bit of room there between that grassy area to the right of the school and the woods itself. And I guess, and I can find this out, but the thing that's been puzzling me about this, I just went through it with somebody too. If you do a subdivision, maybe you could find this out, Dr. Owens, if you do a subdivision once, we're gonna do a minor subdivision for 4 or 5 lots, I believe. How long do we have to wait to do another subdivision? Because if we do it, only divide off 2, 3 acre lots, we're gonna have quite a bit of acreage left. That down the road, we might be able to do another subdivision, so. I mean, I just went through, like I say, I went through that with somebody, and I could probably ask them, they would know that answer rather quickly here. Did I answer your question? It all depends on how we break the lots
Right,
down, how
okay,
far up
all
we
right,
go.
then, you can update us
Yeah,
then.
and I don't think even the largest lot, even at the largest amount that the surveyor mapped out, and I was trying to pull that map up in front of
I
me,
have it here.
I don't even think it comes out of the woods.
Okay.
No,
Harry, can you confirm, is that Pine Creek Township or is that Avis Borough?
that I don't know.
Believe
think
it
it's-
is
I think
Pine
it's a-
Creek Township.
So I would confirm that, because I believe you spoke earlier and said that it was in the borough, and I don't care that you misspoke, you'd all do it. I just want for reference so that people know that it is Pine Creek Township,
Pretty
not
sure, sorry.
borough. That's okay.
Pretty sure in the surveyor's report, he references that it would have to go to Pine Creek Township.
And he also mentioned that it's gonna take a little bit of time because you have to go through the township supervisors, which is gonna take a little bit more time than what it would be if you had a lot that was hooking up to a sewer system and go through the county and be done with it. I do have it here, but.
Mark Wall confirms Pine Creek Township.
Thank you.
I'm gonna pass that around so they can see that map.
I thought maybe when we go over the meeting the next time, you could have a display put up there, but. I'll pass this around here and you could see the school here and, I think he has it surveyed off into roughly 3 different lots of 9.4, 8.1, and 5.4, and then we decided to connect the endpoint over here. I'll just scribble it in here a little bit. And then, like I say, we're still debating on what acreage to go to for the lots. We can come up with something Monday night.
So this is the building, even though it's beyond the woods, doesn't look like there's much space here.
There's a lot of grass in their lawn.
Mr. Kenyon says 90 days for subdivision approval. Did you all hear that? 90
What
days-
about
90 days for subdivision.
What about a
approval.
second one?
He didn't answer me that yet.
Okay. No, it takes a while to get a subdivision through, there's no doubt. Now, if you drive, if you drive into the school, that side door there, it's the area to the right, where the woods is down there in the lawn area, grass area. You can see there's a walking path down through there, I believe, we're gonna stay away from that. So the kids can still use it, keep it as school property. Like I said, I think the only thing we don't have is the sewer lateral hooks up, and then once we have that, we can either sell them with a lateral hook up to the borough, there's whatever there, and then if not, we're gonna have to have it tested, dig a test hole.
Harry, I have a question. Actually, for the sewage, is that a cost to who would purchase it, or is that something we're looking into doing ourselves?
Cost of what? I didn't,
The sewer,
We'll go to the buyer or we'll be us.
the sewer hookup, or mound, or are we paying for it, or would the purchaser? Or
or you mean the 1% fee?
No, she's saying
The
for the
sewer.
sewer, who would
Oh,
pay
that
for
would, that would be up to the homeowner.
okay,
I
that's,
mean, if they wanna hook onto they hook their lateral up to the homeowner, that's up to them. If they wanna dig a
That's-
septic system or put in a sand mound, whatever,
right.
that's their
Yeah,
responsibility.
that's what I thought. That's usually okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry you didn't hear me.
No, like I say, if you're gonna dig a test hole, you're there, you're probably gonna have to dig a test hole in every lot, it only makes sense.
Right.
So you're gonna pay the operator whatever, probably an hourly rate, plus some traveling expenses.
May I say something, Michelle? Okay. Harry, are you done? I don't
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
No.
So this is regards to, I think this current situation that we find ourselves in. And I think it pertains more to how you view it. So at this moment, we are in a unique position. Try to stay focused on the opportunity bestowed upon us, prioritizing on safety first and a higher standard. To accept our exact circumstance at this moment we find ourselves in, even an uncommon position like this, stay focused on an opportunity in accepting and evaluating everyone's needs, and in return, focus on progress and the needs of all the students. That is hard to accept. The scenarios are not theoretical, but reality. When given a diagnosis that pertains to the truth, it cannot be ignored. The justice story must be acknowledged. There is more than one person listening to this now that has dealt with a similar situation. The truth is, it is not my intention to undermine or to mitigate the situation. My understanding is more austere, timeline aside, to prepare to let a tired, antiquated attachments for a safer environment, a new, exciting contingency, make new friends in a newer facility with more resources. A bold adventure succeeds the most. The greatest adventure is what you learn. Accepting reality is easy when you like what you see, but you've got to accept it even when you don't, especially when you don't. I don't always like the reports that I receive. I don't always like the numbers that I see. I don't always like the policies that are put on this, but taking everything into consideration, I think that to the best of our ability, that we can make a better and safer environment for the students and their safety and the faculty. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
But can you give me just a general what your thoughts are if we were to proceed with closure, where the kids would go again? I know we've discussed fifth grade in the middle school and what's the general, as
So
far as
it-
class size, how would that break out? Just for,
Initially, as I presented, K to 5 at Sal would go to Jersey Shore Elementary. My 10-year vision was that the next step, because it needs the most work, is the middle school. The board would have to entertain a study looking at the middle school and what needed to be done at the middle school. At that point, I would advise the board to look at, is there space there that we could add fifth grade and make it 5 through 8 and free up space at Jersey Shore Elementary and have one campus? That's a decision the board would have to make. That's a down the road authorizing an architect to look at that. I've also heard, closing this building and consolidating. I think that's something that could be rolled into that space, looking at that space as you renovate the middle school. But right now, what we have from the middle school is what needs to be replaced. You don't have this is where space could be shifted and added. That would have to be an architectural design. Long term, I would like to see us all on one campus and consolidated, but it would have to come with a renovation. Doesn't mean you would have to add, but you would have to renovate that space.
renovate existing space
Correct.
within the middle school. So you're not talking a big, huge.
Right now, we're not talking
You're
about
talking-
adding anywhere.
Reallocating space, making it more efficient to accommodate that down the road. Okay. Thanks.
Dr. Elmer, with that being said, can you confirm that currently all children in Saldaysburg could fit in Jersey Shore with a school closure?
Yes. I counted today, and as I was working through my responses, I went back to PlanCon documents. PDE uses PlanCon documents to calculate capacity, and that's some of the confusion that we hear. When they come through and count capacity, it's regular ed classrooms. So if I designate something special ed or music or art or whatever, that does not count in the capacity calculation for a building. So that's why we get into arguments over, well, this architect said this number and this architect said this number, because they're counting regular ed classrooms. So if I take a room that right now is like a storage room that we're not have a classroom in, but it's classroom size, and it was a classroom, it was designed as a classroom, put a classroom in there, I've just raised the capacity by 25 in the eyes of PDE for that building. Does that make sense? So there are 43 classrooms at Jersey Shore Elementary. That does not count music, art, the gym, the cafeteria. We are currently not using this many, but we would need to use 30 for K to 5 for both buildings. That means there would be 13 classrooms remaining to include special ed, health, title, speech. They would all continue to have full-size classrooms. They would be the additional 13 beyond the 30 that we would use.
wanted to ask one more question. When you, in this presentation that you gave, educational opportunity, there was an efficiency of staff bullet related to arts and travel time, arts, music, library, phys ed, computer, band, chorus. Was that not addressed last year when the scheduling for the elementary schools were changed?
It was, in terms of when they go, they stay there all day, except for music. Music still, band and chorus still start and then move. So they do have days where they have to start at Avis or Sal and move to the middle school. I know there are others like speech that move. The other efficiency would be that those people would, so if they're both there on certain days, that actually helps us, I believe it will help us schedule different classes within that building. But we did address a lot of it. We could address a couple more things.
Anyone else? Okay, we will move on to courtesy of the floor. First up is Mr. Bob Pryor.
Good evening, Board. Bob Pryor, Mifflin Township. I'd just like to make some comments on last Monday's closure hearing. I know you have your rules, but I wish Ben Anders could have answered some of those statements that were made. First of all, why can't we use reserve fund to handle the situation? People need to know that the new teacher's contract will eat that reserve fund up. At least that's what I heard at one of the meetings. Also, the $8 million stated value of Nipponos, where'd that come from? When I was on the board, we had an appraisal of that school building. It certainly wasn't anywhere near $8 million. And maybe somebody thought, well, that's how much it would cost at that time to rebuild a school, to build a school. So there was never any appraisal that came out $8 million. Also, we taxpayers, property taxpayers in particular, we're tired of the hearings that keep going on and on and on. The previous board ignored we, property taxpayers. At the last election, the taxpayers and those property owners spoke. I want to make that perfectly clear. The district wouldn't be in this situation if some previous boards, not too far back, wouldn't have made decisions with no school closures being in the back of their brains. Maybe you could call that an agenda, I don't know. Also, it amazes me why some people can't understand, especially when they taught environmental science. They can't tell the difference between biological males and females. I'll tell you what it is, folks. It's a mental problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. Okay, Kristen Morse. If you could just please state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Kristen Morris from Saldaysburg. Many people, including a member of your board, asked for more conversations and information prior to the voting. I hope there will be more information, which seems like there was more information given out today and more discussions, so that is nice. We were told to wait until the hearing for more information, and the information that was provided last week was very minimal. At no point were bus routes mentioned. As far as space planning goes, the Hunt study said that we couldn't fit 3 schools into 2 without having some classes in the halls or building an addition. So this holy grail of studies that you're following we're not going to listen to that recommendation. It was also questioned last week what the capacity would be for JSE, so you did touch on that, but I was told that it would be 100%, so maybe there's confusion on that. I also think there was supposed to be a question and answer form going to be circulated. Is that still coming?
So I kept track of questions that people answered and concerns, and I'm working on a document responding to those. I'm just not done with it yet, but it's
I'm sure
coming.
it's a lot. Okay. And then will that just be posted on board docs or?
I plan to share it at a board meeting
Okay.
and post it.
Okay. Okay, so I don't really want to talk much more about the logistics of everything. As it was mentioned last week and then just recently, we're going to teach our kids to roll with the punches and make the best of any type of situation. But I do also teach my kids to stand up for what's right and to speak up if something seems off. So you said last week that we need to borrow $10 million, but the presentation, when you listed out the facility needs, it only added up to $5,247,000. So wondering where the $10 million figure came from. It did say that it came from the Hunt study, but then there was another document from SiteLogic. They don't correspond with each other, so it is a little confusing when you're looking at the items listed on the Hunt study. There are the ones that the only one that has prices listed next to it, and then SiteLogic doesn't. So it is a little confusing when you're looking at the two. So an itemized list would be really helpful. You mentioned in your presentation that we could find a way to find $42 million. I don't see where we need the $42 million. I'm wondering where that number is coming from, because the only place I'm seeing it is under option 1 for the Hunt study. And if that's the case, as I pointed out last week, it includes a lot of items, like over $3 million for new LED lighting for all the buildings, $700,000 for new casework for the whole high school, $465,000 in new ceilings, which do not include the line items that listed out damaged ceiling, worn ceiling, deteriorating, or whatever. So I don't know if it's new or what. So there's just some things that just don't add up between what is the numbers that are being told and everything. So I'm just really asking the board to make sure you have all the information before you do vote. And I'm glad to hear like other people asking questions, and to remind you that it's a 90-day cooling off period before you are allowed to vote. It's my understanding that you don't have to vote in those 90 days. So if you don't have all of the information that you need, please keep asking for it. And I do hope that, Dr. Ulmer, you're going to be forthcoming with all the information. It will go a long way to show, if you can show us the numbers, verify it, break it down, like we're going to accept it. If we can see it black and white, like we're going to accept it. But right now it just doesn't seem very clear and kind of a little wish-washy. So it would go a long way to show that you care about the connection of the community and just be forthcoming a little of some of the discrepancies.
Thank you. Dr. Lilly?
Dr. Lily Langlois, Cummings Township. We remember how you voted last time. So at the previous meeting I wasn't at, I listened to it. There was a lot of talk about experts and how we're going to really put our money in the experts' opinions. So I looked up your experts, and you talked about it, the chair of the Buildings and Grounds Committee, during your first or second meeting, which was like your third, fourth month on the board, right off the gates, going with Wayne Brookhart, senior business consultant at SiteLogic. So I've looked him up. He's been at SiteLogic for less than 4 years. Prior to that, he was for 13 years a superintendent at the Berwick Area School District in Luzerne County. So that certainly doesn't make you an expert in the SiteLogic business of expertise on building evaluations and construction. So if you're going to quote him as your expert, perhaps you could provide us his CV so we know where his background is and why you would put all your weight into his words. Because during that meeting in May 20th, you said, this is a senior business consultant, quote, he's kind of concerned about the direction the board has taken. That was the previous board. Why is he watching our board? Does he have some sort of financial interest in whether the board chooses one scenario versus another? Do you think he's in the business of making money for SiteLogic down the road? And even is SiteLogic in the business of closing schools? The Sun Gazette just published in June of this year, 2024, that the Montoursville Area School District hired them to assess 2 elementary school buildings. You won't believe it. They recommended to close one of them and consolidate. So therefore, they'll be closing the Loyalsock Valley Elementary School. That was their recommendation. It kind of sounds similar to this. You wonder, are they in the business of closing schools? Are they in the business of making money for themselves? Because let me just further quote this letter he wrote to your board. It says, quote, as boards change, as in the previous year, however, we would be remiss if not recommending that the district revisit the 2023 facility summary because boards change, end quote. Is he talking about regime change that some folks wanted when the vote didn't go as it was supposed to, apparently? So you're quoting this summary from a professional consulting company, but I'm wondering how much weight we should put in it, especially knowing where the financial benefits could lie. And there's probably a lot of money to be made. That's my guess, based on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to? Yep.
First thing I'd like to do is just reiterate what the board members and a couple of the other speakers have mentioned. Trying to get some clarity on what it is that we're looking at as far as the district. I spent a fair number of hours trying to wrap my head around all of these projects that we say need to have done. So I went through the Hunt study for option 1, priority 1, option 1, priority 2. I went through their option educational space planning. I looked at their summaries. And then the document from the presentation at the hearing, the ACA project timeline PDF. This has priority 1, priority 2. This has alarm, alert, caution, acceptable. I don't know how to merge these. I don't know how to compare these, what overlaps there are. And then there are these documents, which are also color-coded but have no numbers. There's no costs on any of these documents. So is it possible to produce a single document that includes the items that we're looking at doing in all the buildings, what the priority of those items are, or what the need of those items are, and a cost, all on a spreadsheet, boom, 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 that's easily understood by people that aren't experts, and certainly I am expert. Thank you. This is just too important to not be able to see the numbers and not be able to know the numbers. I feel I can't imagine the board members trying to go through all these documents and trying to pick out which ones are the most current, which ones matter, and which ones don't. Also, I was wondering, will we get a verbal description, detailed verbal description? I need what this middle school project is, what this renovation project is that we're considering. I know at the last meeting, Dr. Ulmer mentioned that there is a plan. However, he couldn't share that because there are building drawings in that plan, and that's a security risk, which I understand absolutely. Is it possible to post that plan or share that plan somehow with us online, preferably, without those diagrams? And I'd like to just mention that you can go to Board Docs, and still available on Board Docs are documents that include all the building layouts that anybody can go to and they can see. So you might want to move those documents. And my last comment, very quickly, I find it interesting that we vote down a $3,003 expenditure to benefit students, but we pass without batting an eye an anti-trans sports policy that could cost us tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars if lawsuits would ever come. Shocking, actually.
Thank you, Mrs. Beerley. I'm going to now close courtesy of the floor, but before I adjourn the meeting, I just wanted to just speak for a moment concerning some comments made, not just here tonight, but even board members questioning on different scenarios of things of possible future. And I said this once before, and I'm thinking it was back in May at one of the Buildings and Grounds meetings that we had, which was a public meeting. And really what has driven on why we're where we're at in the process of trying to make a decision and going this direction that it's headed concerning closing a building. When the committee first met, and like I said, this is public knowledge. I'm just reiterating and reinstating and just repeating what I had already spoken before. But I feel to say it again in light of having already hearing the comments being mentioned. When the committee had that initial meeting with Site Logic, I had asked Site Logic, what about building a new middle school, since this school has come in at $23 million worth of repairs? And Mr. Brookhart and Damian, and I can't remember. Thank you. Mr. Spar said straight up to us, sitting there, you cannot afford to build a new middle school. The school alone will cost you $45 million unfurnished. And to furnish that school, somewhere between $60 and $65 million, your small community cannot afford to do that. So I said, okay, what, in your professional opinion, what is it that we are able to do? And that is why it has driven to this point. They recommended taking the money that we could save on closing a building and consolidating and taking that money to do the necessary repairs at the middle school. We do not obviously have another middle school. We are forced to do some projects there. And unfortunately, as you heard from the hearing and as you've heard from this past year, even our borrowing capacity, we do not have that money available to us that we can afford to borrow. So something has to be done. And I just want to just reiterate that and repeat it again, because I think sometimes we have a lot of questions, and understandably so, but we lose sight of how we actually, what is driving those questions? What is driving us to where and how we got here to begin with? So I just wanted to just state that again, trying to respectfully take the advice of professional engineers that we invited to come here and ask them, what is it that you see? We know there's a lot of repairs that are needed. When we had that study done, to not heed any of what they say is not using wisdom. And so this board is trying to navigate taking all of their expertise and taking in what this community has, how we heard from the community on Monday night, and moving forward. So I just want to make sure that I make that clear, not just to the public, but to the board members, because there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of information, there's been a lot of questions. So, and And I think that that's it. So I just wanted to repeat that again, and I will now close the meeting, and there will be no further business conducted.
Michelle, I'm sorry. Can I ask for an executive session? Only take like 10 minutes. It won't take long.
Concerning personnel safety,
Personal?
yeah, personnel, yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to adjourn the meeting where we will have an executive session, but no official business will be conducted.